So this part of the lesson is about formatting strings. So unfortunately, the most common string formatting style in Python is the printf style that comes from C. It's very basic, but it basically gets the job done. So a lot of the programmers that are used to programming C flipped over to Python just are used to doing that. So that's why that is the most common. It's not because it's the best, it's because people are just used to doing it that way. In this particular class, we won't worry about that, other than letting you know that if you want to turn to your book, I think it's on page 10. You can go to page 10 and find out all of that version. The printf is what it's called, a version of styling strings. We won't do that, formatting your strings for output. What we will do is the much more powerful versions of string formatting, known as string.format, and that's a method. So if your object is a string, then it has these methods that are associated with it, and one of them is a formatting string or format method. I won't cover that one as much as the one that I particularly am enamored with right now is f strings, and so that's the one that we'll talk about today. We'll do f strings, and so if you read the first line here, it talks about printf coming from C. And the ones that we're going to be worried about is the string.format. Again, that's a method. And then f strings is the one. So this is an f string. So this right here does nothing. It's just a string, just like it would regular. And then you can see here any text that you would want to put in the string or put in the string. I guess I mispronounced that. In the string for formatting, or in the string for printing, is what you would put in here. This hasn't really done anything. So this version of this isn't very powerful in and of itself, because this would work even without the little f at the beginning. So the f lets the Python know that this is going to be an f string. F string is another name for interpolated format string, is what the F string stands for. And you can put other letters at the beginning of strings and they stand for something a little bit different. We won't worry about those right now, but do worry about putting an F at the beginning and what that means. So here's what an F string allows you to do. So an F string allows you to insert variables, or expressions or functions. So you can do things inside mathematics, call a function, and then give it a format specification inside these brackets, inside these curly braces, if you will. So what happened, and the other thing that I'd point out is there's a colon in between the variable name or the computation or the calculation in what's called the format spec or the format specification. And so we'll see a couple examples here in a second of what that is. But the idea is that I can put the variable here, and then I can tell it what I want it to look like here. And then we can just keep on typing in any old string that we want on either side of it. And you can get multiple ones as well. I can do another variable and another one, and so on and so forth. And you can stack f strings beside each other, and Python will know to put those together. So you don't have to do anything like a plus or any of that business. If you put two f strings beside each other, Python knows to concatenate together. Okay, so let's bring up our code, and I want to restart. Let's go with consoles, restart kernel. So we restart everything so that we get a fresh set here. And so what I have is example one. I'm going to format the output of this string. And so I've got a couple of variables, one called time, height, length, and width. And you can see the numbers that they're binded to. And then we're going to do this f string, right? So if I execute this code right now, we get F9. So all you've done is you've created these variables over here. So in your variable explorer, so this is another thing I just want to point out about Spider. You have File Explorer, where you can see that I got example 3 in here, and inside this place. So this is the folder that I'm currently in, and I have that file example3.py in there. And then the variable explorer is another one, so that this lets you know that height is assigned or binded to 3.7123, length is to that number, and so on and so forth. So you can see some of the abstractions that have already occurred. Now what I want to do is I want to print this in whatever time the ball will be at height, whatever above the ground, right? So that's the idea. And if you do that, it just puts the numbers that are associated, so you can come back and see that's the variable time. So all it did was it took 0.6513 and it stuck it into that particular spot, and then it left the S there right after it. And again, you're just writing in exactly what you want it to look like. Now, an interesting thing here might be, well, I don't like the fact that it's 4 decimals, but so maybe we want to change that a little bit. So we can come back over to this thing and tell it. So you could change this number, but that's not helpful. What you really want to do is you want to format this time, right? So that's really what we want to do. So go back to the format spec. So let me just pull up. So inside this lesson 01 module that you're going to cover next, it gives you all of this information. But at the bottom down here, I just want to point out, this is probably the most important thing here, is this format spec. So fill is the character, like if you're going to have some padding. In other words, if you have a number that's 12, right? That's only 2 spaces. But you tell it you want to have 15 spaces. The question is, well, what do you fill the rest of those numbers with, right? Because I only had a 12 only needs 2 spaces. But if you tell it you want 15, well, then it's got to know what to do with the other 13. So you could give something different for fill, and other than space. If you don't give it anything, it just puts a space in there. And then align, right? So where do I want to put the 12 at in my 15 spaces? I could put it to the left. I could put it to the right. Equals is supposed to be like aligned. Like if you're in Word and you have it go all the way across the page, I don't know what it would be due with 12, and yeah, it would be kind of funky. And then you can have a left, a right, or a center, right? So those are pretty much the most common ones. And then sign, you can tell it to be a plus or a minus, so that it will print out a sign of in other words, it would give you a positive number if it's a positive number. And then the comma allows you to allow for that thousandth separator. So if you had a million, you'd have a 1, a comma, and then 3 zeros and another comma. So every third space you would have a comma. And then dot precision is what we're going. Oh, I'm sorry, width. So width, we haven't talked about this one yet. So width is that would be the number 15, right? So if I wanted to have 15 spaces, then I would use 15 here for the width, the amount of padding that includes the space for the number. And then precision is what we're going to change right here in this one. Where precision, we're going to change it to maybe 2.2. And then type code is how you change it to be a particular type. And so in other words, if I wanted to be a float or if I wanted to be a decimal, we could do that as well. So these are the common ones. There's other ones available. Anyways, I just wanted to show you where that was located at in the module. So let's bring back up here, and we said we want to change this to maybe dot to F. Maybe this one is also, maybe we want 3 for the height, and F9. And then what happened was it took the time, and then it changed it to 0.65 and then 0.3. So that means it had 3 of those. And maybe you want to have a space after your, yeah, that doesn't look right. I like this. I don't like the space. I don't think that looks right. Maybe it looks right on the first one, but not the second one. So maybe I want seconds beside, but maybe 3.712 meters. Maybe that's okay to have a space in there. Again, it's your decision. And now we see that we're hitting that. If you read PEP 8, the Python enhancement proposal, that's right, that's what it is, Python enhancement proposal. If you read PEP 8, then you know that this line here is at 79. So what it says is that you don't want it to go past 79. And so let's do this. I'm going to shut off this, and then I'm going to close my print. Oh no, I'm going to keep my print open, and I'm going to press enter because another F in here. All right, so that should. So it won't work in Spider. It does. If I hit F9 here, I don't think it'll work. Yeah, so it does not. But if you highlight both of them or you hit the green button, then Python will try to evaluate all of the. So if it evaluates both of these, it'll work. So it evaluates both of them at the same time, and it knows that there's a that this one line isn't all by itself. It thinks it's one line by itself if you hit F9 right here. But if you highlight them both, hit F9, it should work, in which it does. And then you can see that I kind of messed up there. So I want to put an extra space here. And so let's do it again. Then, all right. So that's how we would do that. Now, this next problem, or this next piece, it uses this length and this width, and I made them really big for a reason, so that let's see here. So yeah, I've already put the comma in there, right? So if you don't put the comma in there, let's see what it looks like. So the area length is 1,000.3. The width is 2,002. Yeah, so it would be nice if we had the commas in there, so we could put the comma here. So we're gonna the only thing we're adding to this is given in the format spec. So let's go ahead and shut that off. Hit enter, F, start it back up. Then highlight both of them, and then we get the area length of 1,000.3 and width of 2,002. I went ahead and put the units in, so maybe these are meters, and then the area would be meter squared. So I want to point out this real quick. So the fact that I put the caret here doesn't mean that that's the square operator, right? Because that's all that's doing is, because most people think of the caret as the exponential operator, but in this particular case, it's supposed to be for the user, for the person who's viewing it, and that's why I put it on. So inside the string here, even though the star star, 2 stars, are the actual exponential operator in Python, most people think of the caret as it. So that's why that in your string you can absolutely do that, and hopefully it makes a lot of sense to you to do that, because you want it for people to quickly understand what that means, instead of sitting here thinking, what is this star star? What does that mean? And so on and so forth. Okay, so and again, you could change these things. You go back and look at the format spec, play around with it. That's exactly how you're going to learn how to program. The last thing I want to show you how to do is format for readability. So we're going to use this F string, and so let's just print out what it gives us right now. So example 2 here gives us 1, 12, and you probably haven't seen a for loop yet, or maybe you remember it from IT 105. We will cover for loops later on. I just wanted to show you sort of in a list too, so we haven't talked about lists yet. This is a list. You might remember them from IT 105, or maybe you had CY 300 already. But we will cover this in our class real soon, like maybe lesson 3 for lists and maybe lesson 3 or 4 for loops. But I think those are at the same time. Anyway, bottom line is I wanted to show you how you could use F strings in order to align these, right? So right here you can see that maybe this is the biggest number, right? So, and it's not the largest number, obviously 1232 is, but it's the biggest one as far as that takes up space. So the 12 takes up 2 spaces, and the decimal takes up, and so that's 3, and then I got 4 decimal places after that, so that's 7. So there's 7 spaces. If we were, and maybe we even have other columns here, right? So it's possible that this is just one column of a couple columns of data, right? So this might be one of the columns. So the idea here is, can I take this one column and then align it? So the question is, I mean, as the programmer, you are making decisions on that. So do I want it to align it to the left? I mean, this is already left aligned, so you'd be fine. But what if I wanted to maybe align it in the center, or maybe even align it to the right? How could we go about doing that? So let's do that. And let's use F string. So let's go F string. All right, and that's not going to do anything. So what would happen now? So think about that real quick. If I did this, it would just probably just give us a bunch of E's. So F9, and that's not what we're looking for. So let's put in, remember what you have to do with the F string if you want the variable, the part that changes any way to come out, you'd have to put it in the little curly brace. And that's giving us exactly the same thing that we had gotten before. So that's not really what we're looking for either. What we want to do is we want to put padding on this thing. So remember the format spec. So you got to put the colon. And then, well, how many do we have? Well, we said this sucker had 7 on it, right? This 12 point had 7 spaces. So maybe give it an extra 2. So maybe 9. So let's go 9, or maybe even 10 just for fun. But then you want to tell it which way. So I want to now align it to the right. So we're gonna put a greater than sign because that's the one that aligns it to the right. And if you don't know, just run the code and find out what it does. So if 9 is, so it looks like that it's it's aligning to the right, and it's got the number. So if we had more information over here, we could do the same thing with that data, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea behind using these F strings, and it's pretty powerful. Say you didn't want say maybe you wanted underscores here. I mean, here's another example. Maybe this will work. Let's see. Yeah, so now what you've done is I've put underscores instead of spaces as my padding. I don't know if you remember that what we just talked about here a few seconds ago, but now I have 1, 2, 3 because we said that was 7 and I made it 10. And if you didn't like that, obviously we could go in and go, let's just make it 9 maybe. And you can see that it sort of moves it around and does exactly what we suspect it should do. Or maybe even star, I don't know, star. This will be the last one. All right, cool. Okay, well, that's all I got for this class. I hope that, again, I hope it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and you guys don't have to spend too much time. But the idea is that you learn the material and you're able to answer all the questions in the quiz. Okay, have a good time.